Good morning. Thank you for joining me for another 5 good minutes with the Word. I'm Barry Bryson. And we're going to take some time, 5 or 6 sessions, to go to the New Testament passages that talk about the moment of our own resurrection, our own translation, the moment when we receive our resurrection bodies that Paul described in 1 Corinthians 15. Jesus is going to talk about it in Matthew, Mark, and Luke. And then we'll look at one extensive passage that Paul has in 1 Thessalonians chapter 4 and what Peter has to say about that moment in 2 Peter chapter 3. But right now we're turning to Matthew chapter 24, chapters 24 and 25. This is Jesus' last major sermon that he delivers. He delivers 5 in Matthew's gospel, and this is the 5th, and this is the apocalyptic or the eschatological sermon. The sermon when he talks about apocalyptic events and end events. And in both Matthew and Mark's recording of it, and Luke's as well probably, he's talking about 2 separate events because as we learn from Matthew's gospel, the apostles, as they're on top of the Mount of Olives looking back westward at the sun setting over Jerusalem, they ask him 2 different questions. I'm not sure they knew they were asking him 2 separate questions, but they were. Jesus had told them that Jerusalem was going to be destroyed, and that the temple was not going to survive, that not one brick would lay upon another. And they ask him, how will we tell us about this? What are the signs of it and of the end of the age? They're asking 2 different questions. They're asking about the end of the temple, the end of the city of Jerusalem. And then they're asking about the end of time. In their minds, those events probably had to be the same thing, but they're 2 separate events. Um, the temple has been gone since AD 70. It's been gone. It was destroyed. The only thing that survives is a little section of the outer retaining wall in the old city of Jerusalem, the Wailing Wall. It's gone, and it's been gone for nearly 2,000 years, 1,950 years. Um, but Jesus hasn't come again yet. He makes the distinction between the 2 events clearly in both Matthew's account and Mark's account. And I want to go to the Gospel of Matthew. I want to begin in chapter 24 with verse 36, and then we're going to read through verse 44. Now learn the parable from the fig tree. Oh, excuse me, I started a little too early. Start at verse 34. Truly I say to you, this generation will not pass away until all these things take place. Heaven and earth will pass away, but my words will not pass away. But of that day and hour, no one knows, not even the angels of heaven, nor the Son, but the Father alone. For the coming of the Son of Man will be just like the days of Noah. As in those days which were before the flood, they were eating and drinking and marrying and giving in marriage until the day Noah entered the ark. And they did not understand until the flood came and took them away. So shall the coming of the Son of Man be. Then there shall be 2 men in the field, one will be taken, the other will be left. 2 women will be grinding at the mill, one will be taken, the other will be left. Therefore be on the alert, for you do not know the day which your Lord is coming. But be sure of this, that if the head of the house had known at what time of the night the thief was coming, he would have been on the alert and would not have allowed his house to be broken into. For this reason, you be ready too, for the Son of Man is coming at an hour when you do not think he will. And then Jesus gives this parable about a master who goes away and leaves his household in charge, in the care of his servants, and then comes back at a surprising time. Matthew's parable is a little different from the one in Mark, and we'll talk more about that when we get to Mark. Okay, let's just talk about the consistent elements. of the event that we have in every passage we're going to look at, and most of them are here. It's going to be a surprise. You cannot predict it. Jesus has given them up into verse 36 signs so that they can tell when the destruction of Jerusalem is coming and be prepared for it. He tells them not to worry about certain things, but when you see other things happen, then get ready. And he says that this generation will not pass away until all these things take place. Everything I've just been telling you, this is going to happen in your lifetime. Most of you are going to be alive for this when it happens. It's going to happen in the coming generation. A generation is 40 years in Jewish thought. It will be less than 40 years between the crucifixion of Jesus and the invasion of the Romans and the siege and destruction of Jerusalem. So he's saying that. But of that day and hour, no one knows. The angels don't know. I don't know. If Jesus himself does not know, then no one who writes a book about it can tell you when the end is going to come. None of those charlatans and false prophets and hucksters in the past that knew when God's going to come were right, and none of them in the future are going to be right either, because we don't know. It's going to be a surprise. That's a theme throughout all of it. It's going to be a surprise. There's the connection to Noah. That plays out. Peter is going to make such a big deal out of this. Of course, Peter is there, sitting right next to Jesus. When he's telling this, it's going to be like in the days of Noah. And then there's going to be a separation. Two women grinding at the mill, one taking the other left, two men in the field, one taken and another left. We'll read in Mark's account of this, two are in bed together, like a husband and wife, one taken and the other left. What does that mean? Well, Paul in Thessalonians is going to describe, the resurrection and then those who are caught up together in the air. There's going to be a separation. It's going to be a moment of separation when certain of us will be gathered and certain of us will be left, the lost will be left behind momentarily. And then separately will be taken to the moment of judgment. And we're going to look at that when we look at the judgment scene in Revelation at the end of our study, this study that we've set for ourselves now. So there's that element, and then there is the preparedness. Since you don't know, you always have to live as if. And the living as if means more than just sitting and waiting. It means doing. It means being about your task, which is what this parable communicates. We're going to talk more about the parable and a little bit of the differences between Matthew's and Mark's version of the parable when we look at Mark in a few days. Next time when we're together, we're going to look at what Jesus says about the judgment itself in Matthew chapter 25, beginning with verse 31. Thank you for joining me for another 5 good minutes with the Word.